This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL, Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. And there's definitely some bass fishing to talk about. Justin Lucas over on the BPT on Cayuga got into a shootout yesterday to close out the opening rounds of the fifth or sixth stage of the BPT. He ended up catching 51 bass for 181 pounds, 1 ounce for a 3 pound, 8 ounce average, outdueling Jacob Wheeler, who caught 56 bass for 164 pounds, 10 ounces. Now, I was at Cayuga for a day last month, 3 weeks ago, during the off days in between Kurt Dove's Pro Bass Camp and the ill-fated Bassmaster Open for me on Oneida Lake. And I went out there with Andrew Upshaw. Actually, I caught a 513, but we clearly did not find the fish based on what just went down on Cayuga like that. I think we caught like maybe 9 or 10, but we did a lot of running and looking around. But very impressive what's going on over on the BPT on Cayuga in New York on that string of northern tournaments that a lot of those MLF guys have kind of live up in that neck of the woods for about a month. In Group B, Michael Neal is still holding a lead over Mark Davis. And he had 83-3 to open things up. So a lot of things will change there, but an absolute slugfest. And, man, there's just something about those northern strain largemouth. When you're from the south and you're used to seeing the big heads, the skinny bodies, the Florida strains, the fish that are kind of, hanging out in the summer before fattening up for the fall, there is just something special about those tiny heads on those northern strain largemouth and how aggressive they are. And really cool fish, really fun to watch. I do think it's interesting. This is it really brings up the format difference between MLF and the 5-fish format and then the 2 rounds of zeroing. And I'm not complaining. I'm not belly aching about this. It's just it's hard to wrap your head around because all these guys know what their strategy is. But if you watch the Lucas and Wheeler shootout, which is a really good rivalry, by the way, Justin Lucas and Jacob Wheeler have a really good rivalry. Like, Justin really wants to beat Wheeler, and Wheeler really hates to lose. But, there's a point there in the round where Wheeler caught up to Lucas and passed him and was ahead, and Lucas was kind of in cruise control, and then he had to catch some more, and then they ended up in a duel where I'm sure both of them caught way more fish than they wanted to because the weight zero after the top 20 move on to the elimination round. But Lucas wins the round, right? So he goes straight to the final. So he's guaranteed the weight. The weights are zeroed. He doesn't have to fish the next round. Wheeler gets to start the next round tied with JVD. Now, JVD slid into the 20th place position. He caught 24 bass for 73 pounds, 3 ounces. Great 2 days of fishing on Cayuga for him. Wheeler caught 32 more fish, 91 more pounds of bass, and he's starting with 0 to try to make the finals here in a couple days. So there is a lot to talk about, and I actually talked with Jacob at ICAST last month in July, and said, hey, man, you got to get back. He said, yeah, call me when I get back on the show, get back on BTL. Love talking about stuff. I would love to talk to him about that strategy and read that because there has to be, you're in the middle of the pack. You can put it in cruise control. You don't have to burn up a lot of your fish, but he went for it. And it'll be interesting to see if that decision plays later on in this tournament or if he is on just the mother load of fish, and it'll be a Lucas Wheeler beatdown going into the finals. One more bit of interesting news before we get to our guest today. But really cool guest. It's a educational show today from up north. Jim Van Ryn from X Zone Lures is going to join us. He's the owner of X Zone, has owned it since 2015. We're going to get into a little bit of the history of that company and a really great case study with X Zone Lures as far as the impact that tournament success and developing a tight knit and working with your pro staff has. Obviously, they have the two main guys, and you see one in the ad there that Brandon does for X Zone on BTL, but he's got 3 wins, an open win and 2 Elite Series wins on X Zone Soft Plastics. We just had Carl on the show there, and then he just signed Jonathan Kelly and Cooper Gallant this year. And that paid off immediately as Cooper won on a bait that had just come out. So we're going to talk to Jim about all things owning a business, the trials and tribulations of being in the soft plastics industry in this day and age when there are so many different options, working with your pro staff, developing new baits, all sorts of stuff. So we'll get to Jim here after the first break. But I do want to mention, I scrolling on Facebook, and this was just a straight up Facebook find. I took a screenshot of it, and I'm going to read it. So Lee Hurley posted this a couple days ago. I meant to get to it yesterday, and I didn't. It's ironic. He goes on an Alabama fishing forum. He's like, yo, anything going on Smith Lake this weekend? This is for last weekend. Someone's like, yeah, there's Friday Night Derby. He's like, sweet, thanks, because I went back and looked. Well, I don't think he knew what he was signing up for. He posts this then a couple days ago, and I think this will be out on Best on Tour. If you're not signed up for that, bestontour.net. And it's kind of everything that's going on in the industry. But I haven't seen anything about this. Hasn't seen it on the message boards, but just this. So this is under the Smith Lake Bass Tournaments page. And he said, just a heads up, me and a friend were fishing the Friday night tournament out of the park, and about 8:45 that evening, I got my night blade, which I'm assuming is a black spinnerbait. Big blade on it. I think that's what they throw out there. I'm not a big night fisherman. Anyway, I got my night blade hung behind a pier. And while trying to retrieve it under the cable, I got into a confrontation with the homeowner about the cable going under it and getting the spinnerbait back. I was exiting the other side cable, and they proceeded in taking a shotgun and took 2 shots at us with birdshot, and the second shot hit me in the back. And then he states the obvious. This is unacceptable. And it's been turned into the law. We are in unbelievable times. Please be safe on the water. And he talks about that. He said, do what's right because some would have fired back. They had a gun in the boat, could have been seriously hurt. Homeowners, you don't own the water, so keep that in mind. That's like crazy. Getting shot at? So I wonder if there'll be any more press releases out about that. But that was one of the craziest Facebook posts that I've read in a while. And if anybody knows anything more about that, I could reach out to him too and see. I might be a good guest to come on the show and talk a little bit about getting shot at with birdshot when all you're trying to do is catch a big spotted bass on a spinnerbait at night on a Friday night. So, all right, I'm ready to get into this show. We're going to take a quick break, get Jim dialed up, and be back. BTL. On a Tuesday, August 9th, we'll be back right after this.
Your key to better fishing this season is Elite FS, now available at a new lower price. Get Elite FS 9 today for $9.99, and we'll throw in a C-Map reveal chart, our premium mapping solution for free. Elite FS works with all state-of-the-art Lowrance sonar, from chirp, side scan, and down scan imaging with fish reveal to high-resolution active target live sonar. Elite FS9 and C-Map reveal. Offer ends August 31st.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Tuesday. Now it's time to go to owner and president of X-Zone Lures, Jim Van Ryan. I see on the instant feedback there's some messages. Jim, what's up? Does everyone just call you JVR? Like, is that a thing, or is that just one guy that's just going with the initials?
Yeah, it happens at times. All
right. You good with that then? We just go with JVR from here on out?
Yeah, it's good, right? There's James Van Riemsdyk that plays in the NHL, and everybody calls him JVR. So we got to stay away from it a little bit. Right?
Well, I'm just saying, if you're in the fishing industry and you're known by 3 initials, you've done something right.
There you go.
Fair assessment. I don't know if you were listening to that kind of lead-in segment down there at Smith Lake in Alabama, but you ever been shot at on the water before?
No, not even close. Not even close. That is crazy.
Yeah, and they have some map in there on kind of where he was. I mean, the dock owner, it was pretty easy. The guy was just like, here's the dock, you do it, you look at it, and he's like, here's the guy's name and where he lives and where the dock is. And I mean, it's not like a wilderness deal where the guy's up there like skinning a bobcat and it's the only boat on the lake. Like, it's like residential. Like, it's dock. I don't know if you've ever been to Smith, but it doesn't come across as the shooting type of lake, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's right. It's no, that's crazy, but it tells you a little bit about how radical some people can be in our society, right? Like just the anger and the rage sometimes over, really, if you take a step back and you just say, hey, yeah, I understand you got your spinnerbait caught in my thing, come on and get it, right? But yeah, some people,
it's just those people. So you're up in Canada.
That's right.
But where are you located?
So we are just about a half an hour away from Niagara Falls.
Okay.
So smack dab in the middle between, it's called the Niagara Peninsula. So it's right between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. So I can drive, 20 minutes and be in Lake Ontario, or I can drive 25 minutes and be in Lake Erie. So.
Oh my gosh, I got to pull this up. That you might be in the best location for giant smallmouth. Like, is there a better place?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the Lake Ontario where we're at is not great because it's not the St. Lawrence end; it's the other end of the lake. But the Lake Erie is. We go. My boys go out all the time, and there's just so many fish there that you can just. There's never an excuse not to catch a lot of fish.
Okay, so you're around like Hamilton area?
Yeah, a little east of that in a little town right in the center of the peninsula called Smithville. So.
Okay, very cool. So not that far, isn't from Brantford, which is there. Isn't that where Gretzky's from?
Yeah, that's right.
How far are you away from Gretzky's hometown?
I'd say I could be there probably in a half an hour.
Oh, that's fantastic. There's about 50% of the listeners who know what the heck I'm talking about right now, Jim.
Yeah, that's right.
Greatest hockey player of all time. Unless you're a defenseman, then you typically go with Bobby Orr. But other than that, you'd have to go with Gretzky's kind of a or Howe, I guess. I bet there's some old timers. Like if Tommy Biffle was a hockey fan, he would say Gordie Howe.
Yeah.
But the vast majority say Wayne Gretzky. The whole family come out of Brantford there. Anyway, like I said, I didn't want to get sidetracked on the hockey thing. I talk about it with Mercer every now and then. But so yeah, I'm looking at it. So I didn't realize. So Lake Ontario on that end is not as fertile as it is coming out of the St. Lawrence River, that Alexandria Bay, Kingston area. Completely different fishery on that end of the lake.
Yeah, completely different. So you can go out where the lower. So you have the upper Niagara that flows out of Erie, and then it drops over Niagara Falls. Then the lower Niagara flows into Lake Ontario. Okay. And there you'll get some smallmouth. But you start going away from that. You can head up the shore either direction and catch some, but nowhere near what you're getting in the St. Lawrence area, which is just crazy.
Yeah. Is Erie still as good as it once was, or is it making a rebound? I know that there just hasn't been. Is that because there hasn't been some major tournaments out of that Buffalo area recently, or is it a little bit stingier than it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, that eastern basin, right where it flows into the Upper Niagara River, it really gets pounded, and so it's not what it used to be. But that's not to say, you can still go out in the fall when those smallmouth are schooling up, putting on the feed bag for winter, and you'll still get 5 fish that'll go, 26, 27, 28 pounds. So, but where we go is a little bit further on down the shore, and because it's less crowded, and yeah, you can just get in there. Like my boys were out, and they literally saw schools this spring of what they would estimate to be 350 smallmouth, all
Holy
packed
cow.
together, right?
That's insane.
Yeah, yeah. So the numbers are still there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm moving here. I'm getting okay. So Lake Ontario 20 minutes, Lake Erie 20 minutes. What couple hours to Lake St. Clair?
Yeah, yeah, a little more, probably. Yeah, 2.5, 3 hours.
2.5, 3 hours. So like for me to drive to Grand Lake from the studio, you could be at Lake St. Clair, and then three or 4 hours from Huron.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
Are there any of the pro anglers that are from that kind of area right there?
Not right down in where we are at. A lot of the guys, when you think about the Johnsons or you think about
Yeah.
Cooper Gallant, they're all on the other side of Toronto, and
Okay.
a lot of that is because that's where the good largemouth lakes are, is more towards that side.
So like Rice and Simcoe and all those.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I got a little geography lesson in there. I was unaware of that. I'm looking at Google Earth right now. I'll probably go back and look at it more after the show. That sounds like it'd be like a really great place to like spend a couple weeks in the summer. Just like home base, like in London or something like that. And then spend a week, and then you could literally hit Huron, St. Clair, Erie, Ontario, and Simcoe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the greatest thing ever. So now this makes a little bit more sense. So you are the owner of VRX Fishing, which is like the Rod Glove and then X-Zone.
That's right. Yeah.
And I like to get a little background, a little history of how this went down, because I want to say it was 2008. I was covering 2008 or 9, whenever they went up to Buffalo there. But I was covering a Elite Series event for BTL, and we did all the on-location coverage. But we roomed with the guys who are fishing in that event too. And I remember the guys we were with, they got there, and before they did anything, they're like, we have to go to every tackle shop in the area and get these things called a slammer, because no one had them. No one knew. I mean, even the guys who didn't were like, this is what we need to get. You could get information back then, right? They had a 30-day off limits and stuff, and they're like, this is... So I just remember it was a mad rush. Literally, guys were panicking, running all around to every single tackle store they could, buying every single slammer. And I remember, said, let me see one of those things. I took it out of the package. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? Flat on one side, but that was like my introduction back then to kind of the first drop shot bait that was specific up there. And that's kind of how X-Zone, I guess, got its name, became famous, was because of that little 3.5, 4-inch drop shot bait, the slammer, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's where it all started. And so Mark Kulik, the designer of the slammer, the original owner of X-Zone Lures, these were in the early years of drop shot. So it was kind of one of those first ones out. I think it was, then we had the crosstail shad from Jackal and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the bait got real hot, and it continues to be one of our best sellers. It's just, the design on it is just great. And so we have one in the original size, the 4-inch, and then we have what we call our Finesse Liner, which is 3.25, which actually sells a little better than the original size.
Okay. So that bait came out, and then it seems, I'll just get a little timeline here. Then it seems to me like X-Zone kind of went away for a while. And, being from the South, it's one of those, there's certain baits, right? Like the drop shot baits that the guys use up north, like they're just not applicable a lot of them in Oklahoma, or we're not taking advantage of them. But then when it's up there, it's situational, regional, right?
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden it went away, and then it kind of made a comeback. I would assume that comeback would be when you purchased the company in 15.
Yeah. So locally here in Ontario, Mark was still producing and just
Okay.
getting like all the local stores were still selling tons of them. The problem was is that or the challenge was is that Mark was hand pouring everything. So hand pouring is a bit of an art, and it's not easy duplicatable. You can't just hire anybody to hand pour a bait. So that's a limiter on growth, right? In taking that brand and getting it everywhere because you can't produce enough. So we took, and we spent a lot of time on this, but we came up with a formulation where we could machine inject this bait, but keep all the qualities of a hand pour bait. And so we did that, and we slowly started to phase out the hand pour. We kept it for a little while, but we slowly started to phase it out. And then the machine injected one became a much better seller because it's perfect every time. Versus hand pour, you always have some inconsistencies, and some guys like that. But really the key was duplicating the action and the feel of that bait in a machine process.
Okay, walk me through this. I've never gone over this in the show before. What exactly is a hand pour?
Yeah, so a hand pour is basically, and this is why the bait is flat on one side. It's basically an open mold. So however you see the bait, so if you take the flat side, that's going to be the top of the mold, and then everything that is contoured is below it. So basically you're heating up the plastic, and it's in a big canister with a little valve on the bottom, and you're just taking the mold, and you're just one single cavity, and you're just opening that valve and just letting it go in, and then setting that mold aside, letting it cure, go to the next one. So you may have 40 of these molds, and you're hand filling every single one. What that allows you to do, and the reason why hand pour can be somewhat desired, is that you're not putting that plastic under pressure. It's only filling that mold through gravity.
Okay.
And so that just allows you to make it softer and more supple. And like I said, that's why it took us so long to duplicate that result in a machine environment.
Because the beauty of that bait was the softness, suppleness of it, and the unique action that it had kind of at rest, I guess, on a drop shot that still made it get bit. So you had to figure out, how can I make enough of these that I could turn a profit on it without pouring them 40 at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Because
Okay.
you could do well on it if you charged $9.99 a bag, for instance.
Right. Yeah, that's hard to do, though, for 5 or 6 baits.
Well, it is. And right, there's a certain segment of the market that will pay for it, but not enough to scale a business. And so I knew my sons were coming on, that they would be getting to that age, and they're both avid fishermen. They'd want to be involved in the business. So I knew I had to ramp the business to a size that could, support that many families.
So then the challenge was making a hand pour quality bait with an injection mold.
Yeah. And then what we were actually able, the injection molded slammer is actually better than the original, because we were able to, in our formulation, build a neutral buoyancy. So if you're thinking about a drop shot bait, you want the buoyancy to be, or the buoyancy to be neutral, right? If you have a bait that has too much flotation in it and you're on a drop shot, that bait is just going to go like this, right? It's going to sit vertical. If you're too dense, that bait is going to fall.
Okay.
And that's fine as long as you're moving it. But what you want is, you need that bait to stay at rest and still sit horizontal.
Okay,
right?
so if this is your line, your bait needs to be sitting like with a pen, straight out, not down, not up, out. That's the most productive day in and day out, especially vertically fishing it.
Yeah, absolutely, because it allows you to slow that bait right down, right? If you're moving them and the fish are aggressive, it doesn't matter. They're going to bite it. But if you get into those situations where those bass want to just take a look at it, maybe circle around and come back, and they want to see that it's the same.
Okay, so the injection molds allows for consistency, so it's always neutrally buoyant instead of different densities with the hand bore that creates variation.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Fantastic. It almost sounded like I knew what the heck I was talking about there.
Yeah, I was impressed.
I've watched I kind of have an idea. So one of my buddies is Michael Simonton, and he fished the Elite Series for a while. He's got a little plastics company that makes a cool little swim bait and some drop shot, but literally he was making them in his basement, and he was taking like a little knife and carving it out of like this foam thing and then pouring it into that. And he's like, "You want to see me make some baits?" I went and stayed there a couple years ago, and I said, "Yeah, dude." He was making them like 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And I was like, "That is a freaking lot of work, dude." And he's like, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "I need to figure out a way more efficient way to do it." So now I think he's got one that you can make like 6 at a time, but he's like just hand carving out each one. That would be a hand pour.
Yeah. So ours were the baits were originally made carved out of wood, and then you would take that wood and you would pour silicone all around it. And then you'd pull the wood out, and you're left with your mold.
Is that the way they still do it, or is it all computer stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys will just cut them out of aluminum on the CNC, but there's still
Okay.
lots of guys who will use silicone to make a mold.
Really?
Yeah.
So how'd you like learn about all this stuff? You talked about how you were like, "Hey, we're gonna buy the company, turn it into direct inject, be able to bring it back." Like, what was your background that allowed you to be able to know what the heck you were doing?
Yeah, well, from a business standpoint, I had run for many years a much larger company in the irrigation and automation space for the greenhouse industry, and just up until recently, I had still been working there. So, from a business standpoint, um, the fishing industry, you have to weigh everything as return on investment, marketing, and and just treating people well, right? That's the one thing about business these days. In a day where we become so anonymous, or suppliers have become so anonymous, and they seem like they don't care. Just look after people, and they'll come back. Put out a good product, and they'll come back. Don't cut corners, and they'll come back. So, more from a technical side on the baits, though. It was right at that time that my son joined the business, and he's really the brains behind the molding, the colors, the shapes, the getting all of that just right. He's the guy who does all of that.
And he grew up in this like golden Mecca triangle of smallmouth heaven.
Yeah, that's right.
And so tournament fishermen or just recreational or?
No, just recreational.
Really? So that was the next question then. So, I mean, this is Bass Talk Live. We cover professional bass fishing. Also talk about how to catch some fish here too. But I think being in the bubble that I live in, that a lot of the listeners live in, that you're in, like you get out of it and you forget that there's a lot of people that just fish for the joy of catching fish.
Yeah.
They're not trying to make the next level. They're not trying to beat anyone. They're going out and trying to just catch fish and have a great time with their family and stuff. Do you have any concept as from tournament anglers to recreational fishermen, what that, who buys a pack of X-Zone, who's just going out to try to catch a few, and who's doing it because they think that's how they're going to win the next Derby?
Yeah, there's a good mix of both, and really you need both, right? And so we have a really good following of guys. So there's all kinds of different levels of tournament fishing, as you well know, right? So there's clubs, and then there's regional, and so forth and so on. And we really sell to all of them. But we have a real great community, and I'm sure you guys do as well, of guys who don't like to fish tournaments anymore. They don't even like to fish clubbies. They just like to go out and catch fish, right? And I know what you mean, right? Sometimes we get so geared to thinking that's all there is, right?
Yeah.
But man, it's and that's the great thing about that's the great thing about fishing, not just bass fishing, but fishing in general. It can be anything you want it to be.
Yeah, that is true. How often do you get out on the water now?
Not a lot myself. First of all, people are always shocked because I live so close to Lake Erie, but
Yeah.
I never fish Lake Erie. I'm a largemouth guy, and I
No
love to
way.
go. I love to go north of Toronto and just catch largemouth. So I'll get out on Lake Erie every once in a while, but I mean it's far and few between. But if one of my sons say, "Hey, let's go up north and do some largemouth," I'm in. Right? I don't think twice about that.
All right. So like, Simcoe's a smallmouth deal. Like, oh, that's Scugog. That's where Mercer is, right there on. Okay, so you go up to all these lakes that are up there north of Toronto. Like, are those all deep glacial lakes?
No, a lot of those are flooded from what's called the Trent Severn system. So it was formed in the 20s for tourism, and it runs basically from Bay of Quinte on Lake Ontario over to Port Severn on Lake Huron. So what they did was they dammed it all. They put in locks, and everything just flooded. So you take a lake like Scugog, and it's basically just it's an old farmer's field. So lots of stumps and all kinds of stuff in it, but good fishery, lots of weeds. And we actually just spent our week's holidays up there a few weeks ago.
Um, you mentioned we talked about that. I want to definitely get into this. And this is a conversation I've had with a number of people. I had Sid Reeves on from Spro, who kind of runs the Spro deal, and we basically went with him for a hard bait, like the rock crawler that McClellan designed from concept. Hey, I think this bait all the way to when you see it on the shelf, all the different steps that were involved. Well, part of that was developing your pro staff, the baits that are coming out, staying up with the times, and I wanted to get you on recently. We've had Polinick on in the past. He's a great supporter of BTL and what he does and the way he conducts himself and works. And then we just had Carl on. And I was talking with Carl, and I was like, hey, I said, Jim's been with the show for a long time. There's been some wins on. I said, you think he'd be a good guest on BTL? And I know I'd mentioned it with you a couple times, and he's like, dude, yeah, you gotta get Jim on. It'd be a good time. And what I want to talk with you about, though, is how do you go about deciding your pro staff, who you want to represent it, who you're going to sign? Like I mentioned at the beginning, you just signed Elite Series rookie Jonathan Kelly, young 23, 24-year-old kid, I think out of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And then Coop Gallant out of Canada, but I think he's kind of pegged as the next big thing coming down the pipeline. Hockey reference, he's a Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
When he was playing prep school,
Yeah.
And didn't disappoint. But just kind of talk about the process when you bought it, as who you want to bring on, what's valuable to you, how closely you work with those guys.
Yeah. So the one thing I learned about pro staff and creating a brand is overspend on what you can afford as a business. Because it only accelerates your growth. And what I mean by that is, and I'll give you a good example. When we signed Polinick, for the size of our business to what a guy like Polinick is worth, we had no business signing Polinick, right? Because we were just a small company. But I knew, and I learned this lesson with Swindle on the rod glove, right at the very beginning of our business in 2010. You need to put a face to your brand, and sometimes it's going to cost you some money, but you go on faith, right? You got to believe that I'm going to make the investment and the return is going to be there. So that's always kind of been my theory on it. How do I choose the pro staff's a little bit different there. It always starts with a conversation. So I won't say, oh, look at this guy, I'm going to offer him a deal. It always starts with a conversation. I have to like you and you have to like me, and we have to have similar beliefs and values if we're ever going to be successful together. And that's really what attracted Brandon and myself together. we had a lot of conversations, and we really found out we just believed in the right things: honesty, integrity, value to the customer, all these various things that um, you know, we don't have to be the biggest, and we don't have to be you know, we're not flashy. We don't make false promises. We just value is really what we're striving for, right?
Hmm.
That we have a good product at a good price, and so we just gelled, and Carl's very much the same way. Jonathan Kelly, a little bit different of a story because he was with me with Rod Glove for a long, long time, just kind of on one of those 40% off
Yeah.
deals, and so I kind of watched him grow up through his late teens and early 20s. So he was a natural fit, uh, and then Cooper is man, he's a great kid, great stick, but just gets it right, and um, and just he's just humble. He's just a really good kid, like just raised right. So
I hate. I don't want to put like a tag on him, but he very much reminds me of a young Brandon Polinick.
yeah, that's a great that's a great comparison.
And then the scary thing that makes me feel like I'm old is, Polinick has been doing this for 13 years. So Coop literally probably grew up watching Polinick all the way through the YouTube and all that stuff era.
Yeah,
So like that's like I would assume so. I don't even know if they're friends. They seem to have the same kind of mentality. I would imagine that Brandon's probably reached out after he won the Open, and their paths have crossed multiple times.
yeah. They kind of I introduced them when we signed Cooper this year, and I know they've gotten along great ever since.
Uh, so to you, I mean, I'm just looking at these guys. You take Swindle and that. You're big on positivity and positive mental stuff. Like, I mean, those are, if you were to put a group of guys together who are optimistic and positive and hardworking, like that's probably, you got Swindle and Polinick and Carl. Like, you've pretty much, if you decided to get out of the fishing game, you could take those guys that you have signed and just transfer them to the motivational speaking circuit and go around to like companies and have them go up on stage for like 2-day seminar workshops on being positive.
Yeah, and it's really to me that's very attractive. That's the way I am as well. I just believe that you're going to get knocked down in life. Don't even fool yourself to think that you're not. It's not about whether or not you're going to get knocked down. It's about how do you respond, and that's what these guys do, right? They just keep going, and they know that eventually it'll crack for them.
All right. So along that line, pro staff wise, how involved are Brandon and Carl and some of these guys when it comes to designing a new bait? Because I know that's a big investment. I've done some stuff with big bite baits and seen like how it works, and it's like, holy cow, they're going with that idea. Like they're putting money into this. I hope it frickin' works out, because if it's not, they're going to be like, oh, we lost money on, like, it was pressure. Like Brad Hallman and I did a little flipping bait, and there was a point where they're like, all right, we're going with this, and it's like, okay. So, like for buy-in, I was like, okay, they're actually doing it. Is it a deal where one of the guys comes and says, hey, there's a need for this bait? Is it a deal where you and your son, or your son says, hey, I think there's something in this, where then you take it to them and then they refine it? Like, how does that entire process work, as far as, like the Hotshot Minnow coming out, or the Finesse Slammer, or some of those baits that Brandon has been involved with and has videos out about designing?
Yeah, so Brandon's two big baits with us are the Hotshot Minnow and then the Adrenaline Craw,
Okay.
which has been wildly successful as well. And he was very much involved in those. And to start out, to take it back a little bit and take it a little bit broader, a lot of this stuff is just conversational, right? And so that's why it's important that you're always talking, because we'll always be mentioning baits. Oh, we should think about making this. We should think about making that. Brandon will come up with ideas. Carl will come up with ideas. but you never say on that very first conversation, yep, you know what, let's make one. It's got to come up 2 or 3 times, right? Because we're fishermen. We'd design 100 baits
That's not
all
true.
at once. So you got to kind of let that idea of that bait vet itself out through repetitive conversation. So once I know that we're there in that part of the process, then we just start poking around at it, right? So I'll start to draw it out in 2D AutoCAD, send it over to Brandon, send it to my sons, send it to Carl. What do you guys think? Yeah, we're in the right direction, but I would do this, this, or this. Once we kind of get it close, then it goes over to the 3D process, which I can't draw in, but other people can. And then you start running your prototypes, and you know the prototype process can be pretty expensive, but you just keep on making them until you get it right. And Polinick is an absolute details nut, right? Like if it's just not right, he's going to tell you so. And the adrenaline craw, I bet you that went through so many designs, so many prototypes until it was finally ready. The Hotshot Minnow took 9 months to get it just the way he wanted it. And you know what? I'm a business guy, so I just want to like, okay, make the investment, get it to market, let's go.
Yeah.
And I've really come to appreciate him and my one son Nick, their kind of slow, methodical way of making that bait come to life.
All right, let me share this to just see if this is. All right, so there's the adrenaline craw there. So I noticed like there's also, you can see that photo there.
Yeah, no, that's the adrenaline. That's the adrenaline bug.
The adrenaline bug. So he was the adrenaline craw.
Yeah.
All right, that's a technical error on my part. Sorry there, Jim. All right. Thankfully, you have a very easily accessible website, so you can actually navigate it, which is a plus. So I can do that. So there's the adrenaline craw, right?
Right.
So you're talking about, and I don't know if you can see my cursor there. You're talking about like Brandon and stuff. You're going over the slots, the angle of the ribs, the little bitty things. Like, are all those the little details that you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and the biggest thing to get right on this bait is right where you have your cursor right now, which is the weight, the size of that flange, because that's what gives you all the action that bait has, right? The further out, so you don't want it to look stupid, right? I can make it.
Yeah, you made it huge.
2 feet long, and you get all kinds
and
of.
You look like a prawn.
Yeah. So getting that just right, making it thick enough and heavy enough, because you need to have the weight to hinge on the pivot point of where the claw meets the body. So there's a tremendous amount of prototyping and thought, and cutting out all those little grooves in there, and I mean that was all Brandon. So yeah. It's I won't bore you with all the different things, but
no, go for it. I want to know all the different things. That's the beauty of this show, is I like to go down the wormholes.
Yeah,
no pun intended. The crawl holes.
Yeah. So then you can see on the one on the bottom, that's the underside of the bait on the top, and so we always put an alignment mark on there.
That's this.
Yeah. So when you push your hook through it first, then it's just easy to. When you're coming back through on a Texas rig, it's just easy to find where the center of the bait is. So it always comes up inside of the slot, the hook slot on the top. Kind of a unique end of it. It's not perfectly round. It's oblong, and so that's for a reason as well. And as far as where the tail is, and it's. Yeah, it was a really fun bait to create, and it's definitely become one of our best sellers. The guys on Tactical Bassing just rave about that bait.
Dude, the Tactical Bassing guys move so much product, it's unbelievable. They have the best deal going. Like, they're not exclusive to really anybody. They talk about everything, and there's like a massive cult following that if Matt or Tim say it's the deal, it's like, boom, it's the deal.
Yeah, no, I know.
They're a phenomenon right now for the last 3 or 4 years. Like, they are like some of the biggest trendsetters in the industry, in my opinion, as far as what's moving on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the trust, what they've established with the angler is trust. So you believe what they say, and you have every reason to, because these guys do a complete and thorough job of analyzing a bait. I've had baits that I've been stoked about here within our product line, and I've sent them to them, never heard a word. And it's not that they don't like the bait, but it's not the best in that category. But the Adrenaline Craw has been one that they've come up with custom colors that are for Tackle Warehouse only. It's been great.
All right, we got to take a break in here. If you got time, I'd love to stick around, and I want to wrap up the pro staff talk with how much product moves after a derby gets won on this. I mentioned Brandon's won some on it. Coop won earlier this year on it. Is that an overrated thing that, we live in this bubble here, and I'm thinking, that stuff's got to be flying off the shelves because Cooper just won an Open, or is there a definite correlation between the W and the dollar signs? So if you're good to stick around, Jim, we'll run a couple commercials. We'll be back right after this. It's BTL on a Tuesday with Jim Van Ryn from X Zone Lures. We'll be back right after this.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at DenaliRods.com.
We're just about ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. Get in order.
Once again, Drew Cook is in the driver's seat.
When you're catching fish for a living, you can't let a little cold, rain, heat, humidity, or anything else get in the way of a payday. I wear APCO. Any fish, any water.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Tuesday with Jim Van Ryn from X Zone Lures. You see what I did there? How I scheduled, how I planned that right there.
Beautiful.
For the X Zone Lures Brandon politics to dovetail nicely into the topic that I want to get into. Which, by the way, that's like one of the things that that is so impressive about Brandon is like I called him up. I was like, hey, we need a new X Zone ad for the show for this year. He said, all right, what are you looking for? Kind of told him on it. 3 days later, shows up in the Dropbox, edits it, does the whole thing. I mean, that's stuff that 0.5% of the guys in the industry do.
Yeah.
0.5. Like 99.5% of guys wouldn't do that. That guy is at the pinnacle. He's about to be the 2-time angler of the year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the part of it that is that Brandon just gets. He loves it. It's a bit of a hobby for him as well. And he's so good at it, right? And Cooper is really, like, Cooper just put together a Hotshot Minnow video for us yesterday, and it's just up on our YouTube, but it is off the charts awesome.
Yeah, well, when you're a Cooper and you catch a fish every other cast, it's probably easy to put a highlight reel together. I'm very jealous of the guy right now, Jim.
Yeah.
He's making it look way too easy.
Yeah.
We're like, great. Now we have to deal with this guy. I think he'll only be in the opens for a year, though, at the rate he's going.
Yeah.
All right, so wins to dollar signs. How do you take advantage of it? Is there a correlation? Do you see an immediate spike? How valuable is that to your brand?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it depends a little bit on this how specific the lure is. So I'll give you a for instance. We'll go back to 2020. Polinick wins on Champlain, and he wins on the Finesse Slammer, so 3.25 inch in a green pumpkin blue flake on Champlain. And there was a magical moment in that tournament where he just got into them. And literally the tournament weigh-in's over, and by 8 o'clock that night, I have 150 orders on my website. By 3 o'clock the next day, I've got 300 orders on my website. So it blew up. It went crazy. But that's because it's a unique bait, right? So not a lot of guys, like you mentioned earlier, the guys in the north, yes, but the guys in the south, no, wouldn't know the slammer that well. So for them, it's new, right? So now if we contrast that to when he wins on Santee Cooper, and he wins with a deception worm and our little finesse craw when he's punching, he wins, and it's still exciting. But that's a bait that is, there's 100 craws on the market. There's 100 trick worms on the market. And so it doesn't have the same impact, the immediate impact on sales. But what it does do is it builds the brand. And so those are more like building blocks. Whereas something like the Slammer or even the Hotshot Minnow is like that, being a little bit unique. You notice a much more immediate impact. And even when Polinick was on the St. Lawrence this year, just a couple of weeks ago, he caught 25 something, caught every one of those fish on the Hotshot Minnow, and I get a dealer who calls me right away out of Texas, and he says, you know what, I just saw Brian, he caught all these fish on this, we want to carry your product. And so yeah, it definitely makes an impact, right?
That's the also thing. There's a difference between someone who orders 5 packs because they're going to Champlain and they've got a BFL coming up and they want to make sure they have that color, and then having a dealer who becomes aware of the bait through the tournament, and now you have a revenue stream because now they want to carry that product in their store around Canada, around the United States, right? Like there's two different avenues there: immediate sales versus long-term sales because of the success on the bait.
Exactly. Yeah.
It kind of likened it. So like the deal on Champlain was like the 100-yard dash, whereas like the deal on Santee Cooper was more like a marathon.
Yeah. Right.
You both get to the win, just different ways to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. You got it.
That's really interesting. So yeah, I fish all 9 opens, Jim. And Bassmaster's coming out with a deal where you have to fish all 9 to make the Elite Series next year. Dude, I was just talking with Joel Willard on the phone yesterday, and I'm like, well, how are you doing halfway through the year? And he's like, dude, it's tough, man. He's like, thank goodness I cashed in the last one, and I'm going to 4. So we're sitting here and Bassmaster is saying, hey, we're doing more with the website. We're going to increase the value of the open angler. It's going to give you more sponsor opportunities, more publicity. We're doing live on the final day with FS2. You're a business owner. Coop's a opens angler. He won an open. What was the response for an Elite Series win as opposed to an open win, both on the Finesse Slammer in a new color and the Hotshot Minnow, which is a new bait? Did you still see, I don't want to use the term bang for your buck at the open level with Coop as opposed to probably one of the top 10 most visible pros in the world in Polinick?
Yeah, so it becomes a little bit regional at that point as far as the impact goes, right? Because people have to know who Brandon Polinick is. They have to know who Cooper is,
right,
for it really to make an impact. And we're starting to see, of course, Cooper's circle of influence is increasing the more that people get to know him.
Mm-hmm.
So you really get a lot of buy-in here in Ontario because it's where Cooper's from. Everybody knows him. He's a nice kid. And so really it really helps the brand here. But what it does is it starts to press out of your local area, and you start to get, as the more popular and visible he becomes, the bigger impact he's going to have. So there's only so much you can expect on an open win by a guy who's still making his presence known.
Okay. What's more valuable to you? Live, FS2, live stuff on the internet, magazine articles, website articles? Like will you see, like, let's say the Bassmaster or the Bass Times comes out with the list of the baits and the pictures of them that he won it with. Will you see another spike then? Or is most of the consumer behavior driven by what they see on live on the television or on the live streams?
Yeah, so live is there's definitely that's pretty big. The top 10 lures or top 10, what the top 5 or top 10 anglers used, when that gets printed or put on the website, that's also pretty big. Of course, you're always leveraging social media, and we really don't do a lot of print stuff. Unless we have a guy who's writing for a magazine or something, but I don't put dollars into that.
Okay. JD said, Jim, how do I contact you directly to get some X-Zone in the shop? Best way to get in touch with you. That's JD. He runs a kayak shop out of Illinois. And then I would also be willing to pay anybody who could get rid of the robots that show up about once a week in the comment section too. So if anybody has any hot tips on that, as far as blocking them and putting them in timeout, but is that something that's on the site that he can contact through the site?
Yeah, you can just go through our dealer app on the site, or I'm always available, jim@vrxfishing.com.
Okay. All right. Did you go through a lot of stressful times with the supply chain and all that, as far as getting product to the businesses that you supply for? I mean, was there a lot of empty shelf time, or were you able to get through kind of that COVID period relatively unscathed?
No, actually, COVID was a tremendous opportunity for us, and a lot of this comes down to business decisions that you make previous. And I carry a tremendous amount of inventory, and that really, and I do that just as a matter of normal business practice, because my dealers cannot sell from an empty shelf or an empty peg. If it's not there, it doesn't sell. And when he doesn't sell something, I don't sell something. So put an extra $500,000 into inventory so that you are servicing people at a 99% rate all the time. So what happened during COVID is that a lot of guys couldn't supply. In order to get peg space in a store, unless that store is expanding, if you want to get peg space in that store, somebody else has to leave. You got to take somebody's peg space because there's only so much of it. Now, when those pegs were empty and I had stock and his normal supplier couldn't deliver, we were there basically to fill it. And once you get a peg, it's hard to lose it unless the product just is no good. So it was a great opportunity for us to utilize our large inventory and be able to supply at 99%.
Wow, that's good stuff. Do you see a slowdown in sales after COVID? Like now, I know we just got done with ICAST, and there's a bunch, and they had a big ASA summit meeting and all this stuff where they were talking about it kind of going back to normal with so many people that fished during the pandemic. Or is soft plastic baits kind of deal that people who fish find it, they find something new and they keep buying it?
Yeah, there's our two brands are very contrasting in this way. The Rod Glove is a very mature brand. So when things slow down, when money exit the outdoor space like it's doing right now, right? We had a huge influx of money coming into the outdoor space. And now that people can travel, go out for dinner, all the rest of it, that money is exiting. And so on a mature brand, you're going to notice a drop in sales. But on X-Zone, we notice we're still gaining market share. So our sales are still higher than last year, but not as high as they could have been if that money was still staying in the outdoor space. I'm not sure if that all makes sense.
No, that 100% makes sense. That answered the question I have. What else haven't I asked about this? I wanted to get a better feel for it, and I feel like I've really enjoyed listening you talk about how you kind of explore all the different dynamics of running a soft plastics company. Because I would imagine it's a tough space to be in. There's a lot of soft plastics. All you have to do is go to, Omnia Fishing or a Tackle Warehouse or something and start scrolling through it, and it's overwhelming the amount of plastic that is available.
Yeah. It really is a very tough market. If I compare it again to the Rod Glove market, where we were one of the first ones in, and it was just easy, right?
The Rod Glove's like the chatterbait, right? Like there's a bunch in that kind of frame, but everyone just calls it the chatterbait, just like everyone calls everything the Rod Glove now. I remember when you guys when the Rod Glove first came around, I put a Rod Glove on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the guy's made it his home or the actual Rod Glove. You've got that market.
Well, that's right, and that's a great compliment, right? When you kind of become a Kleenex or of the rod protection market.
Yep.
But yeah, that's where were we going with this thought?
Just about if anything I left out that you feel like has contributed to the success in an industry that's really hard to get a foothold in.
Yeah, right. And so you never take a day off, right? You never let your brain stop. You're always working with people. You're servicing people. You're creating baits. You're working on efficiencies in the shop. You're doing whatever it takes to survive.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of the day, you get up and you do your best. At the end of the day, you go to bed knowing you did your best, and that's all you can do. And you just the rest will work itself out.
Awesome. We'll take a couple questions. JD wanted to know what kind of life cycle you see on baits. It said seems like fishermen are always looking for something new. Do you have baits that cycle in and out as opposed to the standards that have always the kind of slammer that has always been around? Have you had baits that cycle in and out over the course of time?
Yeah, the more unique and the more time and effort you put into a bait, the longer it's going to stay around based on performance, right? The more generic a bait is. So, for instance, we have a bait called the Muscleback Hog Hunter, which is basically just like the Zoom brush hog type of bait.
Yeah.
I didn't put a lot of thought into it. Knew I needed to have one, and you get some sales, but it's really those baits that I categorize baits into two different areas. I call baits generic baits, and I call them brand identifier baits. So the Slammer, Hotshot Minnow, Adrenaline Crawl, those are brand identifier baits to us, and those tend to really last a long time. right, in the marketplace,
Yeah.
because it's who they associate you with, right? Everybody calls the Senko, right? Well, it doesn't matter where it is, but that's a brand identifying bait for Yamamoto.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for.
Dude, this is good stuff. I've learned a lot. I really appreciate it. You got anything else you want to get in here, Jim?
No, what other than just thanks for having me on. Thanks to all the listeners that support us and our brands. It's a great industry, and I just really appreciate having the opportunity to be a part of it.
And thanks for jumping on. Like I said, sponsor of BTL is X-Zone, has sponsored BTL for a number of years, and kind of got the idea of wanting to take the experts in the field, and what better way than to combine that with a show where they support and they get someone on who knows it and do an educational show on it. I think it's the perfect marriage, and greatly appreciate the hour of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy, Jim.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
That was Jim Van Ryn from X-Zone Lures. And I learned a lot about how that works. Like I said, they've done a really good job of marketing with the small guys, especially, with Brandon and Carl on it. Like I mentioned what Brandon did with the commercial there and how he sent it in. The other thing, Carl's in that same category. So we do a lot of guests on the show. Like I always, shoot a message afterwards. Thanks for jumping on. They say, hey, that was great. I get a lot of feedback. Hey, we got some reached out about the show and it was great. But Carl, dude, the guy has a newborn at home. He's fishing. He's got tons of sponsor obligations. If you listen to the show that he was on, you saw how busy he was. He's like, hey, mate, you think you can cut out he's like, I really liked this little 30-second section of the show. Is there any way you could go back and send that to me? He's like, I think it'd be beneficial for you. I'll post it on my social media. I like it. And then it'll help you in BTL. Like that dude didn't have to do that. Like that was totally above and beyond. And that's the type of guys that we're dealing with on there. So, all right. I'll clean the glasses off there. It's not getting fog in the corner. I don't know. I'm not used to the glasses, but I had allergy eyes. We're going to take our final break of the show, come back, talk about what's going on the rest of the week, recap the world of professional fishing, and then move on. So BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back right after this.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. Two sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Wrapping things up on a Tuesday. I've been meaning to wear this shirt on the show before, the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic. It's always, I believe, the first weekend in May. Anyway, I hope there's not an open on top of it this year. I'd love to be able to fish it again. That's the plan. That's the plan as of now with the open schedule not out. Tomorrow, looking to get on the winner of today's round, who won't have to fish tomorrow in the knockout round. Either that or might get Justin Lucas back on. I know we just had him on, but relevance drives necessity, and he's pretty relevant right now after catching 180 pounds. And then Frank will be back on Thursday with the show. Yes, Bo, I'm glad you noticed that was a business show, and I'm sure Mark Jeffries would be very proud of me for taking a dive into the business side of bass fishing. Big shout out to Jim Van Ryan from X Zone Lures. If you get a chance, go check them out and support the companies that support BTL. I think that's all we got for today's show. We'll see you guys tomorrow.